Hey everyone, I'm back with another review. This is of the SIMGOT Fermat EA1000, and I am using my new microphone, so hopefully it sounds better. If it doesn't, just let me know. But I'll be sure to check that out. So here's the box it comes in. This is a dynamic driver and a passive radiator. So the passive radiator is located right here on both of the pieces. So you have to really make sure you get a good fit, because if this part isn't getting really close to your ear, you're not going to hear the bass as you should. So yeah, build quality is really phenomenal on these. It's high quality build, solid, really good cable. It doesn't tangle up that much. It's just a solid product. And the ergonomic side of things is really good. So I did use smaller tips. I wouldn't suggest using too wide of a tip, because if your ears are smaller like mine, you're not going to get the best fit, because this part won't be laying fully flush inside of your ear. So I did choose these CP145s, and then I did try out a few other tips. So yeah, that's the build and fit side of things. So without further ado, let's talk about the sound quality. So the sound quality on this IEM, I would say, is neutral, pretty neutral. It doesn't really emphasize any frequency range that much. It has a balanced bass. So if you're listening to really bass heavy tracks, that tokens a lot of the sub bass frequencies like Lil Wayne or modern rap genres, the bass on this is going to sound pretty neutral. It's not going to be overly emphasized. And it's just going to sound like you hear the beat of the bass. It doesn't have like an extreme rumble or deep sub bass sound, but you hear the beat of the sub bass really clearly. And it's pretty tight and well defined. And then the mid bass on this IEM, it has really good amounts of clarity with the drums. You hear the depth and layering really well. So I was listening to some older tracks, like more analog tracks, and the bass came across pretty perfectly with the drums. I could hear the air and the rumble with the drums. And then when I was listening to other instruments like the guitar and everything, it had this pop. So overall, I would say it's a really well balanced bass response. It doesn't favor sub bass that much, and it has a really good quality mid bass where you could hear everything clearly. If they wanted to improve, I think they could have added a little bit more of a sub bass, because it's not the most amount of sub bass. It sounds pretty flat. But there are nozzles which you could adjust that with to tune it to your preference. But for me, I'm reviewing this IEM with its stock nozzle, which is the stainless one that comes on it. So overall for the bass, I'd give it like a solid 3.5 out of 5, which is like a 7 out of 10. So I think it's still really good. But if they added more sub bass, I think it would make it sound even more energetic and dynamic. So overall, this is a pretty dynamic sounding IEM. It has a good quality bass, and you hear everything clearly. So yeah, decent bass. I would say it's neutral. Would basically paint how it is. And then now let's talk about how vocals sound. So vocals actually sound really, really good on these. They have just solid, it has a solid body in the voices, whether it's male or female. I'm hearing good amounts of clarity, richness, and texture. So with this IEM, what really stood out is how well layered it is. It is pretty well layered. I hear almost like these small pockets of sound, which I hear on more expensive IEMs. So that's really solid. So I do listen to a lot of orchestral tracks. And when I was listening to all of those instruments and really large scale orchestras, the vocals was like dead center, and then the instruments were always in the background, crystal clear, not muddy. So this is not a muddy IEM at all. It maybe has a slight bit of warmth, but the way it's balanced with the treble, I think it's really well done. So yeah, so let's say you listen to a lot of like vocal music like Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift, Adele, The Weeknd. The male and female vocals are always going to be well textured. It doesn't sound that harsh. It sounds clear, precise, and how it should. So I would say the upper mid range is definitely one of the strengths. It just sounds pretty natural. No odd characteristic. And a lot of the songs I tested this IEM with, most of the songs sounded pretty smooth. Like I didn't hear that much of a harshness. Maybe a slight bit of harshness at times, but nothing to detract from the overall listening experience. So that's really good. I really do like the mid range on these. It's a pretty big upgrade compared to like the Warner or the Tin Hi-Fi C3. Those sound like warm and muddy in comparison to these. Even the Sino that I reviewed, that sounds warm and muddy with no definition. So now let's talk about the treble. So the treble on these is actually really good. Like I said, I didn't really hear any sharpness or harshness. The instruments came across really lively and clearly. So the treble is, I would say, maybe a little bit more than your other IEMs that are extremely smooth. So this does have some treble, some great extension with the instruments and orchestras. And one of the things that stood out to me about this IEM was like the soundstage and imaging kind of, because the way the treble is really extended on this, you hear instruments coming in and out really quick and it's snappy. And it just sounds really good, well defined, well layered. So I think they knocked it out of the ballpark with the treble on these. It's just a clear upgrade to some of the cheaper sets I've heard. And yeah, the treble just sounds smooth, whether I'm listening to instruments, pianos, voices, saxophone, trumpet, a flute. It sounds pretty natural. Like, there's not that many IEMs that sound as good as these, I would say, for the price that I've heard. Because it has a solid upper mid-range for male and female voices, full-bodied, not too thin, not too thick. The bass sounds completely separated from the rest of the elements in the track. So I think the way they work this unit with the drivers is phenomenal. And it doesn't sound like a single DD, because a lot of times single DDs, they struggle with treble and capturing that vocal air and nuance in the voices, where this never really did that. I was getting really a good sense of breathiness, and the treble just is really well extended. And it doesn't sound like a single DD because I feel like the bass is so separated from the treble and the mids, where it just sounds clear and everything's in place. So overall, I really like this IEM. It just has the right things you want in an IEM. Sounds pretty neutral, solid mid bass sound, slight bit of sub bass, excellent for vocals, clear and smooth treble for the most part. So maybe if you listen at really high volumes, this might not be the best option for you because there is some treble, but from my experience, it was really smooth. And then it has good imaging and an open sound. and everything seems well layered. So like the tonality of this IEM, I'd probably give it like an A grade or maybe an A plus. It's just solid. I have no problems with the way it sounds in the timbre. And then the technical performance, I'd probably give like an A minus. So these are solid ratings for this IEM, and it just sounded really good. So overall, I do like this. So if they want to improve, maybe add a little bit more sub bass, make it sound a little bit more dynamic, and then that's going to make the whole entire spectrum just sound really good when you're listening to more bassy tracks that token sub bass. But that's just a small nitpick. It does everything else right. And this does get my highest recommendation. It just performs for the price point. And so out of 5 stars, I'd give this like a solid, like a 4 or a 4.5. So that's like an 8 or a 9. That's pretty solid. I mean, I've tried other budget pairs recently and I didn't like any of them, but this is slightly more expensive, but you are getting a better sound. I did try their cheaper EA whatever, the $100 one, and I didn't like it at all. The treble was too harsh. The bass it didn't sound good. But this is probably the best SIMGOT I've heard, and one of the best IEMs I've heard at around $200. So I will link it in the description if you guys want to check it out. It's just a phenomenal IEM, and I'm gonna listen to it more actually because I do like it. And then if I get more IEMs in, I will compare it to this because I think this is one of the benchmark sound that I've heard. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this review, and hopefully the mic sounds great, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.